What the hell is this?
Preston Moore stared at the rusty metal lunchbox as if it carried disease. A black man in cement-stained boots had just placed it on the marble counter of Sterling Crest Private Bank.
Get that disgusting rubbish off my counter. You're leaving rust on Italian marble. Sir, I need to send something inside.
Preston burst out laughing, his face turning red.
What, your leftovers from 1972? A sandwich wrapped in newspaper?
He turned to the lobby.
Look, everyone. This man brought a rusty trash can into a private bank.
The man picked up the lunchbox, sits down silently, holds it on his lap as if it were sacred. Preston wouldn't be laughing much longer, because what was inside that rusty, dented, disgusting lunchbox was worth more than Preston Moore could earn in 10 lifetimes. But let me take you back. Before the lunchbox, before the lobby, before Preston Moore ever opened his mouth. Because this story doesn't start in a bank. It starts in a small house on Mecklenburg Road, Charlotte, North Carolina. A house with chipped yellow paint, a vegetable garden out front, and a screen door that creaked every time the wind blew. That house belonged to Alma Davis. Alma was 84 years old when she died. She passed quietly in her sleep on a Tuesday morning in March. No headlines, no fanfare. Just a woman who spent 30 years working the floor at Piedmont Textiles, a textile mill on the south side of Charlotte, and then spent her retirement growing tomatoes and watching game shows in a recliner that had her shape worn into the cushion. She raised one grandson. His name was Lawrence Davis. Lawrence was 38. He worked as an electrician for a small construction company. He woke up at 5:30 every morning. He drove a 10-year-old sedan with a cracked taillight. He rented a 2-bedroom apartment 12 minutes from his grandmother's house. He wasn't poor, but he wasn't comfortable either. He lived paycheck to paycheck, like most people do. When Alma died, Lawrence was the one who cleaned out her house. He packed up her clothes, her dishes, her photo albums. 40 years of a woman's life folded into cardboard boxes. And then, at the bottom of her bedroom closet, tucked under a shoebox full of old receipts, he found it, the lunchbox. It was metal, rectangular, rusted at the hinges and dented on one corner. The kind of lunchbox factory workers carried in the 60s. No brand name, no decoration. Just a scratched metal box with a clasp that barely held shut. Lawrence recognized it immediately. He had seen it in every photo of his grandmother from her working years. Alma, standing outside the mill in 1970, lunchbox in hand. Alma on the factory bus in 1975, lunchbox on her lap. Alma at the company picnic in 1982, lunchbox beside her on the bench. It was as much a part of her as her hands. He opened it. Inside, no food, no keepsakes, just a folded letter and 5 pieces of yellowed paper, each one covered in fine print, official stamps, and signatures. The letter was in Alma's handwriting, shaky but clear. Larry, I don't know if these papers are worth anything. I bought them in 1968 with 3 months of my wages. People at the mill said I was crazy. But I wanted to leave you something more than this old box. Take them to a bank and ask. Love, Grandma. Lawrence looked at the papers. They said Piedmont Textiles across the top. 200 shares, issued August 1968. He didn't know what they meant. He didn't know if the company still existed. He didn't know if stock certificates from 1968 were worth $2 or $2,000. He folded them carefully, put them back in the lunchbox, and closed the clasp. The next morning, he took the lunchbox to his regular bank, a commercial branch on 5th Street. The teller looked at the certificates, turned them over twice, and shook her head. We don't handle this kind of thing here. You'd need to go to a larger institution, somewhere with a wealth management division. She typed something into her computer. Try Sterling Crest Private Bank. They're downtown. They deal with securities and estate transfers. Lawrence had never heard of Sterling Crest. He didn't know that it was one of the most exclusive private banks in North Carolina. He didn't know that the minimum account balance was $5 million. He didn't know that the people who walked through its doors wore watches that cost more than his apartment's annual rent. He just knew a woman at his bank told him to go there. So the next day, a Thursday, 8:15 in the morning, Lawrence Davis put on the cleanest jacket he owned, picked up his grandmother's rusty lunchbox, and drove downtown. He parked 3 blocks away because the parking lot outside Sterling Crest was full of cars he couldn't pronounce the names of. He walked through the glass doors, and within 60 seconds, he realized he had made a terrible mistake. Not because of what was in the lunchbox, but because of the people inside the bank. The lobby smelled like leather and cedarwood. White Italian marble floors polished to a mirror shine. A string quartet playing through invisible speakers. Waiting chairs made of hand-stitched brown leather with brass rivets. Fresh orchids and crystal vases on the side tables. The air itself felt expensive, cool, filtered, deliberately silent. This was not a bank. This was a cathedral built for wealth and for the very specific kind of people who had earned the right to walk through its doors. Lawrence stood inside the glass doors. His work boots left gray cement prints on the marble. Every pair of eyes in the room landed on him at once. A few looked away quickly. Most just stared openly, the way you stare at a bird that somehow flew into a department store. He walked to the reception counter. A young woman sat behind it, blonde hair in a bun, pearl earrings, manicured fingers resting on a keyboard. Name tag, Cheryl. "Good morning," Lawrence said. "I have some old papers, stock certificates, I think. Someone at my bank told me you could help check if they're still valid." He placed the lunchbox on the counter, metal scraping against polished stone. The sound cut through the lobby like a scratch across a record. 2 clients at a nearby table looked up. Cheryl's smile froze. Eyes moving from the lunchbox to his boots, his jacket, then back to the rusted box sitting on her clean counter. "Sir, Sterling Crest serves existing clients by appointment. For general inquiries, I can give you a number to Cheryl." Sharp, flat, already annoyed. Preston Moore had been watching since Lawrence walked in. He rose from his desk 20 feet away and crossed the lobby in 4 strides, Italian shoes clicking on marble like a countdown. 46 years old, senior private banking advisor, 12 years at Sterling Crest, top earner 3 years running. Slicked dark hair, monogrammed gold cufflinks, Mont Blanc pen in his breast pocket like a weapon. He looked at Lawrence the way you look at a stain on a white shirt. "I got this, Cheryl." Eyes locked on Lawrence, cold and flat. "Sir, can I help you?" Not a question, a warning in 4 polite words. "Yes, sir. My grandmother passed away recently. She left me certificates in this box. I just need somebody to look at them and tell me—" "Stock certificates." Preston repeated it slowly, like teaching a difficult child. He looked at the lunchbox. "In that thing." "Yes, sir." Preston placed both hands flat on the counter, leaned forward until his cologne filled the space between them. "Let me explain something. This is Sterling Crest Private Bank. We manage portfolios starting at $5 million. Our clients are CEOs, surgeons, developers, people who build things in this world. We do not dig through rusty lunch pails to check mystery papers for people who wander in off the sidewalk. Are we clear?" Calm, polished, like a blade wrapped in silk. "I understand it's a big bank, sir, but the woman at my branch told me—" "Your branch." Preston almost smiled. "Which branch? The little one next to the check-cashing place on 5th? A man in a gray suit nearby looked up, said nothing, just watched. "First National on 5th. They said you handle old securities here." For our clients, Preston straightened up, tugged one cufflink. Do you have an account with Sterling Crest? No, sir. Referral from an existing client? No, sir. Documentation of liquid assets above our minimum threshold? I honestly don't know what that means, sir. Preston's mouth curved. Not a smile, a verdict. A judgment already written the second Lawrence walked through the door. Then we're done. He pulled a glossy brochure from under the counter and slid it across the marble. Basic checking division. Different building, different street. More your speed, friend. Lawrence looked at the brochure, then at Preston, then at the lunchbox. Sir, it would only take 2 minutes. Somebody just looks up the company name and tells me 2 minutes of my time is worth more than whatever's rattling inside that disgusting rusty tin can of yours. No blink. I'm not being cruel. I'm being honest. You're in the wrong place. You don't belong here. Lawrence picked up the lunchbox. For one moment, it looked like he might leave. He didn't. He walked to the leather waiting chairs, sat down carefully, placed the lunchbox on his lap, both hands on top, guarding it like something sacred. I'll wait right here. Maybe someone else has 2 minutes. Preston's jaw tightened visibly. He turned to Cheryl. 10 minutes. If he's still here, call building security immediately. He walked back toward his desk. Halfway there, he passed a colleague named Edwards and said, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear, I swear, every week it gets worse. Last month, a guy asked me to break 100. Now we've got one dragging his dead grandmother's garbage can in here, begging us to dig through it like this is the Salvation Army. What's next? A shoebox full of pennies? Edwards let out a chuckle. Quiet, almost guilty, but a chuckle. Lawrence heard every word. Hands on the lunchbox, eyes forward, face showing nothing. But his right thumb pressed hard into the rust on the lid, pressing until the knuckle went white. The only sign anything was getting through. 20 minutes crawled past in heavy silence. Lawrence did not move from the chair. He did not check his phone. He did not shift or fidget. He just sat perfectly still with his grandmother's lunchbox on his lap, hands folded on top of the rusted lid, waiting for someone in this building to treat him like a human being. Clients came and went like wealthy ghosts. A couple in matching cashmere signed trust documents. A man with a Cartier watch reviewed his portfolio over espresso. Each one glanced at Lawrence as they passed, the way drivers slow down to look at a wreck on the shoulder. Curious, uncomfortable, never stopping. A woman in a silk blouse pulled her handbag closer to her body as she walked by his chair. Then Catherine Ellsworth walked through. Branch manager, mid-50s, navy blazer, gold buttons, reading glasses on a gold chain around her neck. 6 years running, Sterling Crest Charlotte, the way a museum director runs a gallery. Everything curated, everything controlled, nothing out of place. Lawrence was out of place. Preston intercepted her near the conference hallway, voice low, professional. Catherine, we have a situation. Walk in, clearly not a client, won't leave. He's sitting in the VIP area with a rusted tin box on his lap. Caldwell meeting in 18 minutes. It doesn't look good for the branch. Catherine glanced past his shoulder. She saw the boots, the jacket, the dented lunchbox. She didn't walk over, didn't ask what he wanted, didn't ask Preston a single question about what the man had actually said or why he was here. She did not extend to Lawrence even the smallest courtesy of hearing his voice before deciding his fate. 3 seconds. Decision made. Handle it gently, Preston, but handle it. 5 words. No investigation, no curiosity, no decency. Just a woman in authority giving silent permission to a man who needed no encouragement at all. Preston straightened his tie and nodded. Consider it handled. He turned and walked back toward Lawrence with renewed purpose in his step. And from her small desk near the teller window, Denise Carver had been watching every single moment unfold. 26, junior teller, 8 months at Sterling Crest. Biracial, black mother, white father. She knew exactly what she was watching happen to this man. She had seen it before. Not this dramatic, not this openly cruel, but the same quiet machine doing its work. The same invisible system sorting people into 2 categories the moment they walk through a door. Belongs here and does not. She watched Preston heading toward Lawrence with that expression on his face, shaped like a smile but carrying nothing behind it except contempt and authority. And then Denise did something small. She filled a paper cup with cold water from the lobby cooler, walked all the way across the marble floor, and set it down on the small table beside Lawrence's chair. Here you go, sir. Can I get you anything while you wait? Lawrence looked up at her. His face softened, just barely, like the first thin crack of dawn after a very long night. It was the first time his expression had changed since he walked through those doors. No, ma'am. Thank you. Denise nodded and walked back to her window without another word. She didn't know it yet. Nobody in that lobby did. But that one small act, a cup of cold water and 5 kind words offered to a man everyone else had already thrown away, would be the single reason Lawrence Davis remembered her name when everything inside that building finally changed. Preston stopped in front of Lawrence's chair. He didn't sit down. He stood over him, feet apart, arms crossed, chin tilted upward. The posture of a man who owned the ground beneath him and every inch of air above it. Last chance, friend. Walk out on your own, or I'm going to have Glenn walk you out. Your choice. Glenn was the security guard, 6'3", buzz cut, arms like concrete pillars. He had been standing near the front doors since Lawrence sat down, watching, waiting, one hand resting on his belt. Preston gave him a look. Glenn started walking over. Lawrence stayed seated. I'm not causing any trouble, sir. I'm sitting in a chair. You're trespassing. The front door was open. I walked in and asked for help, and you were told no. Multiple times. By me. Preston leaned down, both hands gripping the armrests of Lawrence's chair, his face inches away. Let me make this real simple for you, okay? Nobody in this building is going to touch your little rusty box. Nobody is going to look at whatever sad pieces of paper your grandmother stuffed inside it. You are wasting your time. You are wasting my time. And you are making every client in this room deeply uncomfortable just by sitting here. His voice dropped to a whisper. Do you really not understand? Or do I need to spell it out for you? Lawrence met his eyes, steady, unblinking. Spell what out, sir? Preston straightened up. His face hardened into something past annoyance, something closer to genuine disgust. Look around you. Look at the people in this room. Look at how they're dressed. Look at their shoes, their watches, their cars parked outside. Now look at yourself. Look at your boots. Look at your jacket. Look at that thing on your lap. He pointed at the lunchbox. You don't fit. You don't belong. And deep down, you know it. You knew it the second you walked through those doors. So why are you still sitting here embarrassing yourself? Lawrence said nothing for a long moment. Then, quietly, because my grandmother asked me to. Preston blinked, then let out a short, ugly laugh. Your grandmother asked you to sit in a private bank with a rusty lunchbox and refuse to leave? That's your answer? She asked me to find out what those papers are worth. That's all I'm doing. What they're worth? Preston shook his head slowly, smiling the kind of smile that makes your fist clench. You want to know what I think they're worth? Let me tell you exactly what I think. I think your grandmother was a sweet, confused old lady who didn't know any better and didn't have anyone around to tell her she was being foolish. I think she collected some worthless papers from whatever factory she was cleaning floors in, and I think she stuffed them in her sad little lunch pail because she didn't have a safe, didn't have a broker, didn't have a single person in her life who would take her seriously enough to help her. And I think you drove all the way downtown this morning, holding on to some pathetic little fantasy that you're about to get rich off Grandma's junk. He snapped his fingers right in Lawrence's face. That's what I think those papers are worth. Nothing. Absolutely zero. Just like this entire waste of my morning. The lobby was dead silent. Every single person had stopped what they were doing. The couple in cashmere, the man with the Cartier watch, Cheryl at the reception desk. Even Glenn, standing 3 feet behind Lawrence's chair, had gone completely still. Lawrence's jaw tightened hard. His eyes dropped to the lunchbox. His thumbs pressed into the metal, slow, deliberate, the dried rust flaking off under his skin like dried blood. When he spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. She didn't clean floors. She worked the production line at that mill. 30 years. Same difference, Preston said. Those 2 words hung in the air like smoke. Glenn stepped forward. He put his hand on Lawrence's shoulder, heavy, firm, fingers pressing into the fabric of the faded jacket. The way you handle someone you have already decided is a problem and not a person. Sir, I need you to come with me, right now. Lawrence looked at Glenn's hand on his shoulder, then up at Glenn's face, blank, following orders. Then at the lobby full of people watching him from their leather chairs like a spectacle. Not one face showed sympathy, not one mouth open to object. He didn't resist. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't curse or shout or swing. He stood up slowly, holding the lunchbox against his chest with both arms, the way a father holds a child he is trying to shield from something terrible. I want it noted, Lawrence said, loud enough for the room. I came here to ask about papers my grandmother left me. I sat in a chair, I didn't raise my voice, I didn't threaten anyone, and I'm being physically removed from this building. Preston rolled his eyes dramatically. Nobody cares about your little speech, buddy. Glenn, get him out. I'm done with this whole circus. Actually, a voice said from behind them, I'd like to see what's in the box. Everyone turned. Denise Carver was standing at the edge of the lobby, 3 steps from her teller window. Headset off, hands at her sides. Voice calm but clear. The kind of calm that comes from a decision already made. Preston stared at her. Excuse me? He's asking someone to look up stock certificates. I can run a QSIP search on our system. It takes 2 minutes. Denise, go back to your window. Right now. He's been sitting here for almost 40 minutes asking for 2 minutes of someone's time. I have 2 minutes. I'm offering. This is not your call. Preston's voice turned sharp. The politeness was gone. Completely gone. You are a junior teller. You don't decide who gets serviced in this branch. I do. Catherine does. Not you. Denise didn't move. Not a single step backward. She looked past Preston, directly at Lawrence, and spoke only to him. Sir, I can help you. May I see the certificates? Glenn still had his hand on Lawrence's shoulder. Lawrence looked at Denise, then at Glenn, then at Preston, whose face had turned the color of raw steak. Take your hand off me, Lawrence said to Glenn. Not angry, just clear. Glenn looked at Preston. Preston said nothing, His mouth opened, then closed. For the first time, someone had challenged his authority out loud, in front of clients, and he had no idea what to do about it. Catherine Ellsworth appeared from the hallway. She had heard the raised voices. She looked at the scene. Glenn gripping Lawrence, Denise standing in the lobby, Preston red-faced and rigid. "What is happening here?" "Denise is overstepping," Preston said quickly. "I told the gentleman we can't help him. She's contradicting me in front of the entire branch." "I'm offering to do a 2-minute search," Denise said evenly. "That's all." Catherine looked at Denise, then at Lawrence, then at the clients who had stopped pretending to mind their own business. The Caldwell couple, one of the branch's most important accounts, had just walked through the front door. They were standing near the entrance, watching everything. Catherine made a calculation, not a moral one, a reputational one. Dragging a quiet black man out while the Caldwells watched would be catastrophic. "Fine," Catherine said tightly. "Denise, do your little search, make it quick, and then we are completely done with this situation." Preston's mouth fell open. "Catherine, you cannot be—" "I said fine, Preston." Her voice was ice. Not because she cared about Lawrence, because she cared about the Caldwells seeing this mess. Denise walked toward Lawrence and extended her hand. "May I?" Lawrence reached into the lunchbox. His fingers trembled slightly. The first visible crack in the wall he had built around himself. He pulled out the 5 yellowed certificates and placed them into Denise's palms carefully, the way you hand someone a letter from a person who will never write again. "Thank you," Denise said quietly. She turned and walked to her workstation. Lawrence sat back down, the lunchbox on his lap, hands on top, eyes fixed on Denise's back as she settled into her seat and began typing the name of a company that had not existed under its original name in over 40 years. Preston stood frozen in the middle of the marble lobby, arms rigid at his sides, jaw clenched so hard you could see the muscles jumping beneath the skin. He had lost complete control of this situation, and every single person in the room knew it, including him. He stared at the back of Denise's head with a look that could curdle milk, but he did not move, did not speak. Because for the first time in 12 years at Sterling Crest, Preston Moore had been overruled by a 26-year-old junior teller in front of a room full of his own clients. The lobby was silent, except for the soft clicking of Denise's keyboard. Nobody, not Preston, not Catherine, not Glenn, not one single client, had any idea what those 5 yellowed pieces of paper were about to reveal. Denise typed the words Piedmont Textiles into the securities database. The system thought for a moment. Then a result appeared. She clicked it. Piedmont Textiles, founded 1952, Charlotte, North Carolina. Acquired by Southern Consolidated Mills in 1981. She clicked again. Southern Consolidated Mills, merged with Colton Briggs Industries in 1999. She clicked one more time, and the screen changed. Colton Briggs Industries, Fortune 100. Current share price as of market close yesterday, $1,024.50. Denise's hands stopped moving. Her eyes locked on the screen. She blinked once, twice. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. She scrolled down. Stock split history. 1981, 2 for 1. 1988, 3 for 1. 1995, 2 for 1. 2003, 2 for 1. 2016, 2 for 1. She grabbed a pen, started calculating on a notepad. 200 original shares, multiplied through each split. Her pen moved faster. The number kept growing. She underlined the final figure twice. 41,600 shares. She multiplied it by the current price, wrote the number, stared at it, then calculated again, because there was no way she had done it right the first time. She had. Denise turned her chair slowly to face Lawrence. Her face had changed completely. The professional calm was gone. In its place was something closer to shock. The kind of shock that comes when reality bends in a direction you did not know it could bend. Mr. Davis, her voice was barely steady. Do you know what these certificates represent? Lawrence looked at her from across the lobby. Old stock from the company my grandmother worked at. She bought them in 1968. Sir, Piedmont Textiles was acquired in 1981, then merged again in 1999. The company is now called Colton Briggs Industries. It's one of the largest industrial corporations in the country. Lawrence stared at her. He didn't understand yet. Through the mergers and stock splits over the past 58 years, your grandmother's 200 shares have multiplied. Denise swallowed. You are holding 41,600 shares of Colton Briggs Industries. The lobby was so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming through the vents. At yesterday's closing price, Denise said, those shares are worth approximately $42.6 million. Lawrence did not move. He did not jump up. He did not shout. He did not pump his fist or grab Denise by the shoulders or call someone on his phone. He sat perfectly still in that leather chair with the rusty lunchbox on his lap, and he looked down at it. His eyes filled with water. Not fast. Slow. The way rain collects on a windshield before the first drop falls. He opened the lunchbox, took out his grandmother's letter, the one written in shaky handwriting on lined notebook paper. He read it again, even though he already knew every word. She didn't know, he said. His voice cracked on the third word. She worked there 30 years. She bought stock in the company that paid her wages. And she died not knowing what it was worth. He pressed the letter against his chest, closed his eyes, held it there. The lobby was frozen. Cheryl had both hands over her mouth. The man in the gray suit had taken off his glasses. The woman who had pulled her handbag closer earlier was staring at Lawrence with wet eyes. Glenn had taken 2 steps back from Lawrence's chair, his hand hanging limp at his side. Catherine Ellsworth stood near the hallway entrance, white as paper. Her reading glasses hung crookedly from the gold chain around her neck. She had not moved since Denise said the number. And Preston Moore. Preston was standing exactly where he had been standing when Denise started typing, in the middle of the lobby. But everything about him had changed. His face had drained of all color. His Mont Blanc pen had slipped from his breast pocket and was lying on the marble floor. He hadn't noticed. His mouth was slightly open, his jaw slack, like a man watching his own house burn down from across the street. He took 1 step toward Lawrence, then another. His voice came out thin, stripped of every ounce of authority it had carried 5 minutes ago. Mr. Davis, listen, I think we got off on the wrong foot here. I would be more than happy to personally assist you with— Stop! Lawrence's voice was quiet, but firm enough to freeze Preston mid-step. Lawrence looked up at him. No anger on his face, no triumph, no satisfaction. Just a deep, heavy weariness. The kind that settles into a man's bones after a lifetime of being measured by everything except who he actually is. 5 minutes ago, you called my grandmother a confused old lady. You called her life's work junk. You snapped your fingers in my face and told me I don't belong here. Lawrence paused. Now you want to personally assist me. Preston opened his mouth. Nothing came out. The only thing that changed in the last 5 minutes is a number on a screen. That's it. I'm still the same man, sitting in the same chair, wearing the same boots you laughed at. Lawrence held his gaze. So let me ask you something, Preston. If those certificates had been worth $5 instead of $42 million, would you be standing here right now offering to help me? Preston could not answer, because they both knew the truth. And so did every single person watching. The silence lasted exactly 6 seconds. It felt like 6 hours. Then everything moved at once. Catherine Ellsworth was the first to react. She crossed the lobby fast, heels clicking sharp against the marble, and positioned herself between Preston and Lawrence, like a woman trying to stand in front of a fire she had helped start. Mr. Davis, I am so sorry. On behalf of Sterling Crest, this is not how we treat our clients. Please allow me to move you to our private conference room, where our senior wealth management team— Stop talking. Lawrence didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You were standing right there. You watched the whole thing. You told him to handle it. Catherine's mouth opened, then closed. Her eyes darted to the side where the Caldwell couple was still standing near the entrance, watching every word. There was a miscommunication. I didn't fully understand the— You understood enough. You saw a black man with a lunchbox, and you decided I was a problem. You didn't even ask my name. Catherine had no answer. Her hands were shaking. She clasped them to hide it. Preston tried one more time. He stepped forward, palms up, voice thin as tissue paper. Mr. Davis, look, I was just following protocol for walk-in clients. We get people in here all the time who who don't meet the— I wasn't trying to— You told me I looked like a stray dog. Lawrence's voice was flat. You told Glenn to drag me out. You called my grandmother's life savings junk. Which part of that was protocol? Preston's face crumbled. No arrogance left. No smirk. No Mont Blanc confidence. Just a man standing in the middle of a marble lobby, realizing that the last 45 minutes of his life had ended his career. Lawrence turned to Catherine. I want 2 things. First, I want him gone. Not later, not after a review. Now. Catherine looked at Preston, then at the Caldwells, then at the lobby full of clients who had witnessed every single word. The calculation was simple. There was no version of this that ended with Preston still employed by the end of the day. Preston, Catherine said, her voice tight and controlled. You are suspended immediately. Effective right now. Please surrender your access badge to Glenn. Preston stared at her. Catherine, you told me to handle it. You said— Your badge, Preston. Preston looked around the lobby. Every eye was on him. The couple in cashmere, the man with the Cartier watch, Cheryl at the reception desk, who wouldn't look at him, Edwards, who had chuckled at his joke 15 minutes ago, now staring at his own shoes like they were the most interesting things in the room. Preston reached into his jacket, pulled out the badge, handed it to Glenn. Glenn took it without a word. The same Glenn who 20 minutes ago had his hand on Lawrence's shoulder, ready to throw him out. Now he was standing next to Preston, one hand gesturing toward the front door. This way, sir. Preston walked toward the exit. His Italian shoes clicked on the marble, the same sound that had announced his authority an hour ago. Now it sounded like a countdown to nothing. He did not look back. He pushed through the glass doors and stepped into the morning sunlight, and just like that, 12 years at Sterling Crest were over. Lawrence watched him go. He did not smile. He did not gloat. He looked down at the lunchbox on his lap and ran his thumb along the rusted edge. Then he turned to Catherine. Second thing, when I come back with my lawyer to handle the transfer, I want Denise Carver assigned as my account manager. Not you, not whoever replaces him. Her. Catherine blinked. Mr. Davis, Denise is a junior teller. She doesn't have the certification to manage an account of this. She's the only person in this building who treated me like a human being. That's the only certification I need. Lawrence stood up, tucked the lunchbox under his arm. I'll be back next week. Make sure she's ready. He walked toward the glass doors. His cement boots left gray prints on the white marble all the way to the exit. He pushed the door open with one hand, the lunchbox pressed against his ribs with the other. Nobody in that lobby said a word until long after the door closed behind him. Lawrence walked out of Sterling Crest that Thursday morning and drove straight to a payphone. He didn't have a lawyer. He had never needed one. But he had a name, Reuben Brooks, written on a business card his neighbor had given him 2 years ago after a landlord dispute. Reuben Brooks was a civil rights attorney in Charlotte. Small firm, big reputation. 20 years taking cases that larger firms wouldn't touch. Housing discrimination, employment retaliation, predatory lending in black neighborhoods. Lawrence sat in Reuben's office that afternoon and told him everything. The lunchbox, the certificates, Preston Moore, Catherine Ellsworth, Glenn's hand on his shoulder, the words stray dog and garbage can and same difference. Reuben listened without interrupting. When Lawrence finished, Reuben leaned back in his chair and said one sentence. They picked the wrong man on the wrong day. Within 48 hours, Reuben filed a formal civil rights complaint against Sterling Crest Private Bank and Preston Moore personally, citing violations of the Equal Credit Opportunity Act and North Carolina's anti-discrimination statutes. He also sent a legal preservation letter to Sterling Crest's corporate headquarters, demanding they retain all security camera footage, internal communications, visitor logs, and employee records related to the Charlotte branch. Sterling Crest's legal department responded within just 6 hours. They knew exactly what was coming. But they didn't know about the video. Denise Carver had recorded 63 seconds of footage on her personal phone during the confrontation. The clip started the moment Preston snapped his fingers in Lawrence's face and ended with Glenn's hand pressing down on Lawrence's shoulder as Preston said, "Get him out." 63 seconds. No commentary. No filter. Just raw, unedited footage of a black man being humiliated and physically removed from a bank for the crime of sitting in a chair. For 3 days, Denise kept the video on her phone. She wasn't sure what to do with it. She watched Sterling Crest's internal response, a quiet suspension for Preston, a carefully worded memo about customer service standards, no mention of race, no mention of what actually happened. She watched Catherine Ellsworth walk into work the next morning like nothing had changed, coffee in hand, reading glasses on her chain. On the 4th day, Denise uploaded the video. It hit 8 million views in 72 hours. The clip of Preston snapping his fingers and saying, "That's what Grandma's papers are worth," nothing, zero, was looped and shared across every platform. The hashtag #RustyLunchbox trended nationally for 3 days. Nora Sullivan, an investigative journalist at Channel 9 News in Charlotte, called Reuben Brooks the same week. She had been working on a long-form segment about discrimination in private banking for months. Lawrence's case was exactly the kind of story she had been looking for. Specific, documented, undeniable. Nora's team pulled public records. They filed FOIA requests. They interviewed former employees. And what they found went far beyond Preston Moore. Over the past 3 years at the Sterling Crest Charlotte branch, non-white walk-in visitors were turned away without service at 4 times the rate of white visitors. 2 prior complaints had been filed against Preston for racially charged language. Both were investigated internally, and both were closed without action. Catherine Ellsworth had signed off on both closures. The pattern was not an accident. It was a culture. Sterling Crest's corporate headquarters launched a full internal investigation. Within 2 weeks, the findings were damning. Preston Moore was terminated. Not suspended, not reassigned, terminated with cause. His professional banking licenses were placed under regulatory review. No major financial institution in the Southeast would return his calls. Catherine Ellsworth was removed from her position as branch manager and transferred to an administrative role at a regional back office. She would never manage client-facing operations again. In her transfer paperwork, a single line read, "Failed to intervene in a discriminatory incident despite direct knowledge of circumstances." 2 other staff members at the Charlotte branch received formal reprimands for contributing to what the investigation called a permissive environment for bias-driven client screening. Reuben Brooks reached a civil settlement with Sterling Crest on Lawrence's behalf. The financial terms were sealed, but Nora Sullivan reported it was among the largest discrimination-related settlements in North Carolina banking history. But Lawrence didn't stop there. He made one additional demand as a condition of the settlement, and Sterling Crest agreed to every word of it. The bank committed $12 million to a new initiative, revised walk-in protocols across all branches, mandatory bias training for every employee from teller to executive, an independent oversight board for discrimination complaints, and a financial literacy scholarship fund for underrepresented communities pursuing careers in banking and finance. The scholarship fund was named the Alma Davis Financial Access Initiative. Lawrence insisted on the name. Sterling Crest's board did not argue. Nora Sullivan's segment aired on a Tuesday evening. It ran 14 minutes, long by broadcast standards. It included the Denise Carver footage, interviews with Lawrence and Reuben Brooks, testimony from 3 other Black and Latino clients who had experienced similar treatment at private banking institutions across the state, and a statement from Sterling Crest's CEO acknowledging systemic failures in our client engagement culture. The segment was picked up nationally. Cable news ran clips. Print outlets published follow-ups. The conversation expanded far beyond one bank. It became a national examination of who gets treated as a person when they walk through certain doors, and who gets treated as a problem. At the end of the segment, Nora Sullivan asked Lawrence one question on camera. "What do you want people to remember about this story?" Lawrence was sitting in his grandmother's living room. The rusty lunchbox was on the table in front of him. He picked it up, held it with both hands, and looked directly into the lens. "My grandmother bought stock in the company she worked for. She did it in 1968, when nobody believed a Black woman had any business investing in anything. She kept the certificates in this lunchbox because no bank would open an account for her. She carried this box to work every day for 30 years, and she died without ever knowing what was inside it." He paused. "I don't want people to remember the banker who laughed. I want them to remember the woman who believed, even when nobody else did. Especially when nobody else did." The camera held on his face for 3 full seconds after he stopped speaking. His eyes were dry. His hands were steady on the lunchbox. Behind him, on the wall, hung a framed photograph of Alma Davis, standing outside Piedmont Textiles in 1970, lunchbox in hand, smile wide, looking straight into a future she would never see, but somehow always trusted was coming. So where are they now? Lawrence Davis hired an independent wealth management firm to handle the $42 million his grandmother left him. He continued working as an electrician for 6 more months, not because he needed money, but because he had committed to finishing a contract, and Lawrence Davis was the kind of man who finished what he started. When the contract ended, he bought back his grandmother's house on Mecklenburg Road, renovated it from the foundation up with his own hands, rewired every outlet, sanded every floor. Then he turned it into a free vocational training center for young people in the neighborhood. Electrical work, plumbing, carpentry, financial literacy. He called it the Alma Davis Trade Center. The lunchbox sits in a glass case in the front hallway. Beneath it, Alma's handwriting on a brass plate. "I don't know if these papers are worth anything, but I wanted to leave you something more than this old box." Denise Carver was promoted to Client Relations Manager at Sterling Crest within 3 months of the incident. Lawrence personally requested her as his point of contact during the entire settlement process. 6 months after that, she left Sterling Crest entirely and accepted a senior position at the independent firm managing Lawrence's portfolio, at 3 times her previous salary. When a local reporter asked her why she stepped forward that day in the lobby, Denise gave an answer that stayed with everyone who heard it. Because everybody else in that room decided he wasn't worth 2 minutes of their time. And I knew that feeling. I grew up knowing exactly what that feeling does to a person. Preston Moore was terminated from Sterling Crest with cause. His professional banking licenses were suspended pending full regulatory review. He applied to 4 major financial institutions over the following year. Every single one rejected him. The last public record of his professional activity shows him working as a loan processor at a small regional credit union 40 miles outside of Charlotte. His name returns no results on any major banking directory. The Mont Blanc pen, the monogrammed gold cufflinks, the Italian leather shoes that used to click across marble. None of it followed him out the door. Catherine Ellsworth was removed from her branch manager position and transferred to a back-office administrative role. 5 months after the incident, she issued a public statement acknowledging that she failed to act when action was clearly required, and that her silence contributed directly to an environment where discrimination was permitted to continue unchallenged. She has not held a client-facing management position since. She likely never will again. The Alma Davis Financial Access Initiative, funded by the $12 million commitment from Sterling Crest, has awarded 43 scholarships in its first 2 years of operation. 3 of those scholarship recipients now work in private banking themselves. One of them works at the same Sterling Crest Charlotte branch, where Lawrence Davis once sat in a leather chair holding a rusty lunchbox, while a man in a tailored suit told him he did not belong. And the lunchbox. That is the part of this story that matters most. Not the $42 million. Money is just numbers on a screen, and Preston Moore taught us that much. Not the firing, not the lawsuit, not the hashtag or the news segment or the sealed settlement. The lunchbox. A woman named Alma Davis worked 30 years on the production line at a textile mill. She earned barely enough to keep the lights on and raise a grandson by herself. And in 1968, she took 3 months of her wages and bought 200 shares of stock in the very company that paid her. People called her foolish. No bank would open an account for her, so she folded the certificates and placed them inside her lunchbox, the same dented metal box she carried to work every single morning for 3 decades. She never checked the value. She never sold a single share. She never told a soul what she had done. She just believed that someday what she planted would grow into something worth carrying. She was right. Always had been. This story is fiction, but the lunchboxes are real. They are in closets, shoeboxes, kitchen drawers, and the hands of people who walk into rooms every day where someone has already decided they do not belong. The question is not whether those people exist. The question is, what happens when they finally open the box?
You know what makes me angry? How fast people judge a container without ever looking inside. A rusty box, they laugh. Old clothes, they dismiss. Rich hands, they look away. The world decides what something's worth based on the outside, and never once bothers to open it up and check. And that's not so stupid. That's expensive. Because the most valuable things in this world almost never come in pretty packaging. They come in dented boxes and worn-out wallets and calloused hands. They come carried by people who don't look the part, don't dress the part, don't talk the part, but are holding something inside that will blow your mind if you give them 2 minutes of your time. 2 minutes, that's all it takes. And most people would rather laugh for 30 seconds than listen for 2 minutes. And that's how they miss everything. The opportunity, the chance, the fortune sitting right in front of them because they were too busy judging the wrapping to ever open the gift. So, stop laughing at what you don't understand. Stop dismissing what doesn't look familiar. And for God's sake, when someone puts something on the table and asks you to look, you have no idea what you are turning away. Like, share and subscribe your stories, results every week. And remember, the rustiest box in the room might be holding the most valuable thing in it. Open it before you laugh.